with your picture, but at least I can hear you.
Hello, everybody. Oh, my goodness me. What a start. What a start. Tom is something between the Matrix, between Edinburgh and wherever in the Shire that Tom lives, somewhere very leafy, as you can see behind him, is not working very well. I am definitely sure that some of you will have issues with audio and video today. I'm posting a little link, just done it. If you click that link, if you're seeing lags and delays of anything like that, if you click that link, what will happen is that your feed will kind of delay by 2 or 3 seconds. It won't hurt anything at all. I don't think anything we're doing is that time sensitive. That will hopefully help a little bit. So listen, sound and vision good, say people there. Tom, do we want to see if your stuff works? Speak, man, speak.
Yeah, so can you hear me now? Because it's good. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, okay, great.
Fantastic.
Well, let's
Okay, brilliant. Well, listen, thank you, everybody. We've got loads on today, so thank you, everybody, for coming by. Let's just have a little look at what we're going to cover today. We're going to spend nearly all our time talking to Tom, because why not? And we're incredibly happy that he could join us in what will be only one of his last 150 interviews before leaving the industry. But let's just have a quick look at what we'll cover. So as usual, I'll make me and Tom quite small down the bottom, and we'll just look at what's coming up. If it's okay with you, I do want to give Tom the time he should have, and we're kind of 10 minutes delayed, so we might run over the 1 o'clock just a little bit, but you can always watch it back if you need to go at 1. So this is week 7 of these. Can you believe it? Week 7 of lockdown, week 7 is the hardest week apparently, only followed by week 8 and week 9 and so on and so on. So with Tom, we are going to concentrate on all sorts of fun stuff, I guess, but I want to talk about transfers more than anything else, and that will be our main topic of conversation. Please ask questions, chuck in chat in the right hand side as you always do, and very, very, very last call for this. I know I've been bleating about it forever. I'm closing the survey today in terms of rating your platforms, and I'm happy to say Hargreaves Lansdowne isn't one of the platforms that you can rate. So if you see the little green button below your feed, you can do that there, and that's very, very much appreciated. We will do an after party today, and Tom's going to hang around a little bit and just pick up stuff that maybe we didn't have time to pick up from the chat on the side. So listen, we like to do a wee bit of stato or a little bit of research here. Now, this isn't my research. This is from Origo, and Origo actually going to come and join us in a couple of weeks on Home Games, because they're up to loads of interesting stuff. So I thought we should probably hear from them. And this is from their transfer index. So I'm going to get Tom to explain why transfers are so important to him personally in just a wee moment. He's been involved in industry bodies and so on. But Origo has been collecting transfer times. Now, these are the times that it takes providers to transfer out once they receive the transfer out instruction. And you've got 2 columns overall, which is unsurprisingly all pension transfers. Excuse me, and this is pension transfers, I think, Tom, isn't it, rather than ISAs and that kind of stuff. And then there are simpler transfers where there's no funny business, maybe with properties or unusual assets or any of that kind of stuff. So if you, Origo are incredibly transparent about this, actually. They get the data from all these providers who submit the data themselves. So I guess they're marking their own homework a little bit, but I don't think anybody's lying. And we can see what the results are there. This particular chart doesn't have the drift or the trend in transfer times, but we'll come on to that, and Tom will tell us. I think that's been coming down. And have a look, man. There's some really, really good results in there. Let's like Aviva, the average seeding performance on a simpler transfer, 4.8 working days. Even some firms that we maybe don't deal with quite so often, a MetLife, to Phoenix. Now, here's an interesting one. Phoenix, one of the zombies, generally perceived to take a long time in that. The average 5.7 for simpler transfers, 8.1 for traditionals or more complex ones. Big providers, OM Wealth, they're 6.7 and 10.8. Zurich, a little bit slower on the corporate side, 18 and 20 for their workplace stuff, but a lot faster on the retail stuff. And Standard Life there, 4.8, 7.8, not bad at all. There are a couple of things that stand out. There are a couple of kind of very, very quick ones. NFU Mutual, I think, doing really well there. Royal London maybe a bit slower than we think. There is, though, Tom, one provider, and I'm really sorry to have done this, but you did mention that this was a good resource to look at, and there is one company that seems to be a bit of an outlier there, but we needn't spend too much time on them, I guess. But there's Hargreaves playing, I think, what we'll call a supporting role with an average seeding performance of 27 days, even for simpler transfers. So lots more to do there. Okay, so I'll close that down now, and I'll close that one. And there we go. We're back. Right. So that's enough of that. So, Tom, how you doing? Are you hearing me still?
So, I can still hear you, and I'm glad that we've moved on from that painful phase of the conversation. Look, it's nice not to have to be an apologist for Hargreaves Lansdown in that regard anymore. I will make a couple of observations about that chart, and then we'll kind of loop round to the bigger picture. So first of all, we consent to having that data published. Not all companies do. So there are companies who aren't appearing on that chart, and we made a decision some time ago to give permission for Origo to publish the data about Hargreaves Lansdown's performance, because we think that transparency and scrutiny is important, and that's why I've been involved in the various collaborative industry projects on transfers. So you've got to stand up and be counted, even if it's a bit painful at times. And so there's a lot below the waterline that you don't see there because companies choose not to publish the data. Hargreaves Lansdown probably does legitimately, you can legitimately argue that it has a more complicated challenge than some providers, because very often we're transferring client accounts that comprise GIA, ISA, pension, all at the same time, rather than simply transferring a personal pension from A to B. We try to transfer in specie. That is generally the right thing to do, and we can discuss that further perhaps later on if necessary. But that's more complicated. That involves more counterparties. Turning stuff into cash, moving cash, and then reinvesting at the other end is relatively simple by comparison with shifting stock from A to B. And there's a whole separate conversation going on with the investment manager community about how we can get the in specie transfers working faster. But if you do in specie, it's complicated. The other problem Hargreaves Lansdown has is that it's such a brilliant company and so successful that it has to do more transfers than many others. So if you're only doing half a dozen transfers, and Hargreaves Lansdown has to process literally thousands of them. Now, the problem is some of our processes are still manual. And when you're doing manual processes across thousands of transactions, then you get into trouble. I can tell you there is a huge amount of work going on inside Hargreaves Lansdown to automate and improve processes right across the piece. And there is a massive commitment to making that happen. It's not my problem. It actually never has been. That's an operations issue. But there are a lot of people working really hard to improve those numbers for Hargreaves Lansdown. Say no more on that unless we come back to it. Okay, thank you. Thank you. So the bigger picture, look, this is people's money. And they don't understand why, when they ask to move money from institution A to B, it takes a month, 2 months, 3 months. Why we apparently make stuff complicated for them. We're in a post-DB world. This is a DC world. The outcomes are on us. It's our money. We make good decisions. We manage the money well. We get good outcomes. If we don't, if we ignore the questions, if it's all too complicated, if the industry puts barriers in our way, the end result is we have a poorer life further down the line. So The FCA has recognised this. We've seen them specifically and explicitly calling this out. They want people to own the money. They want the industry to remove the barriers to engagement, to access, to control, to market competition. If you're with a poor company, but it's just too much hassle to move, that again is not a good place to be. So I think from a personal philosophical point of view, from a corporate point of view, from Hargreaves Lansdown's point of view, because we get a lot more transfers in than transfers out, so there's a business argument there, and also because it's just this is a good thing to do for everybody involved. There was a general sense from my part, this needs to be fixed. The FCA, for their part, called the industry into a room 2 or 3 years ago, locked the door, kicked the chairs around, said sort it. So the FCA, they're trying to apply pressure, but it's really difficult for them to do that because, and the simplistic answer is, well, just legislate, just pass regulations to say you must do a transfer within the specified time. Sounds simple, but there's so many counterparties involved. There's so many steps in the chain. You're going to get companies, you already get companies saying, well, we've done our bit, but we're waiting for X or Y or Z, all the different counterparties in the transaction to do their bits. It's not our fault there's a delay. You can't fine us for that. So once you start digging into the weeds, digging into the detail of the transaction process, you need to collaborate. You need to find a system where everybody can work together. So after the FCA called everyone into a room, shouted at them, told them to sort the problem out, go away and fix it, they wanted a self-regulatory solution. The whole industry, 10 trade bodies, UK Platform Group, the IA, the PLSA, the ABI, everybody, UK Finance, everybody got in a room together and said, okay, what are we going to do about this? We need to come up with this common set of standards. We need to be able to evidence what we're doing. So it's not just about improving what we're doing. It's about measuring what we're doing. It's about sharing that data with external stakeholders, with the DWP, with the Treasury, with the FCA. So the industry between it set up this transfers and re-registration industry group to try and agree, okay, what are we going to do here? I was involved in that. We came up with a blueprint that said, okay, what we need to do is to find ways to track the data. And some of this stuff is happening with Origo, Altus do stuff, but that's not the whole market. And, it might only cover pensions or it might only cover ISAs. You need and the customer doesn't understand, or it might only cover personal pensions. It might not cover SIPs. It might not cover DB pensions. The customer doesn't appreciate the distinction between those. They just want to move their money. They want predictability. We did some consumer research. It turns out if you tell somebody it's going to take 3 weeks, they'll be okay, I was hoping to do it quicker, but 3 weeks I can live with. If they send in their request thinking it's only going to take a week and then it takes 3 weeks, they get quite pissed off. So it's about management of expectations as well. It's about predictability. So the industry came up with a blueprint. We did lots of consultations. We came up with a blueprint, said this is how we think we can do it. It's partly about putting in place measurement of transaction processes, and then it's about reporting it, and then it's about finding ways to improve those over time. So that's what the Transfers and Re-registration Industry Group created as a blueprint. And then they needed someone to implement it because it's not really the ABI's job to do that. It's not the IA's job to do that. So we put out a request like, who's going to do this? And I think we came up with a pretty good answer there, which was a collaboration between TEX, that is a contract club, and is used by pretty much the entire industry on the one hand, and the offshoot of Origo, Criterion, that does the standards piece for Origo on the other hand, because Origo has got the technology and it's got the systems and it's got a lot of the experience. Put the two together, and between them, that's quite a powerful mix. You get both breadth and depth. So they came together. We talked it all through and came up with an agreement whereby they would work together, and they put together this collaboration called STAR. Which actually stands for Speedy Transfers and Re-registration. So there's a nice little acronym there, but we know it to start. And what they are now doing is the hard yards of working through how we measure stuff, how we do it in a way that's fair to everybody. So I'm getting distracted by looking. I shouldn't read comments then. It's just looking at my narrative, right? So
it's just Pete's feeling wistful for the most part. Pete's feeling emotional today.
And talk to me about it. So we find ways where we can measure stuff on an equitable basis, where everybody's step is measured, everything is reported fairly, everything is scrutinized. It can then be reported to external stakeholders, to Guy Opperman at the DWP, to the FCA, to the media. Everybody can see what's going on. And through the measurement, we also have a mechanism in place whereby we can identify where the weaknesses are, whether it's individual firms, Hargreaves Lansdown or whoever, or where there are breaks in the processes that need specific focus. Electronic signatures. Look, if we get everybody on electronic signatures, everything will move faster. So let's now focus on that bit. But you can't do that unless you've got the data. And over the last few months, last year or so, STAR has been working with lots of people across the industry, giving their time, giving their knowledge, giving their skills to build this process, to build this system that will allow us to measure, report, scrutinize, and improve. And that's where we're at today. That is what is going on today with the collaboration of the likes of the FCA and DWP and TPR. And it's hard work, and obviously coronavirus hasn't helped because that sort of disrupted everything, but the work is still going on. We have monthly meetings on that. There are working groups doing regular meetings in between, and it's probably going to take some time yet. We're not, there aren't quick wins here. And in fact, moving to things like in-specie transfers actually slow things down for a while, but then you can speed them up again. So sometimes you've got to go backwards to get on a different ladder that will eventually take you higher. And that too is what we're working on.
There's an interesting comment from Ben at Altus, from Ben Hammond at Altus there, saying a lot of delays are about retention policies, it seems. And I guess that, if was the thing about if a guy's salary depends on him not understanding something, that'll be quite hard to get him to understand it, right? And Turkey's voting for Christmas. So without, names or any of that kind of stuff, there must be a range of approaches from firms who are either happy to be good corporate citizens and participate, and those who are like, money out is not really my priority, right?
You're absolutely right, Mark, and we have seen that. There are absolutely instances where firms have deprioritized transfers out and thrown all their resources to transfers in. That doesn't wash. And actually, to be fair, I think generally across the industry, people recognize that doesn't work. And that too is one of the benefits of getting everybody in a room together. Because if your business is behaving like that and you're sitting across the table from everybody else and everybody else is looking across the table at you and saying, come on, you've got to play fair here, it's quite hard to keep doing that. So the simple fact that we're all in the room together collaborating, that if we all work together, we all benefit. If we all abide by the same set of rules, we all benefit. That's quite powerful. I want you to transfer your money across to me quicker. Well, do you know what? If I send my money to you quicker, then we both benefit from that. So So you're right. There have been issues in the past with firms not entirely playing fair. I think that is diminishing. I wouldn't pretend it's entirely gone away. But I think the more we do collaborate, the more we work to a common set of standards, the more we get everybody in the room together, the less of an issue that becomes.
And Fee Tate there, I Fee, and this is definitely true. I've seen this many times in the past. Certain providers very happy to take money on in a streamlined way, but I found that with some of the modern providers as well, robos and those kind of guys, maybe not so much in pensions for my experience with these people, but it's all fine when you're joining. But the second you want to do anything that's money out or data out or any of that kind of stuff, life starts to get quite complex. Do you think that the new kids on the block are doing better than the kind of big gorillas?
So I signed the new contract for my new job. I've not actually physically met any of the people I'm working with. Adam Norris recruited me over the phone, right? We've not actually sat down opposite each other and talked to each other yet.
They might just be trolling you, Tom. This might all be nothing, right?
So tomorrow the email comes in saying April Fool, right?
It was due to be, the Fool was meant to be transferred to you at the 1st of April, but it was delayed for 5 weeks. So
I signed the contract for my new job online. It was a PDF document. It works. It's fine. And everybody's happy with that. Legally, you can do this now. It is literally enshrined in law. The problem I found quite interesting is going back into Hargreaves Lansdown, because I was challenged on this from others outside the industry saying, well, where's Hargreaves Lansdown on electronic signatures? So I go back in, and then you've got to go around legal, you've got to go around ops, you've got to go around money laundering, you've got to go around risk. So everybody's got to be happy with it. Then you've got to go back around and you've got to put in place the processes to make stuff happen. And the unfortunate reality is the bigger firms get, the more inertia they're carrying, the longer it takes them to do that kind of stuff. And it's not necessarily a lack of willingness to do it. It's simply that you're trying to change the tire on a vehicle while it's moving down the motorway at 70 miles an hour. And you're dealing with literally thousands of transactions. And you've got dozens of people in a department. And you're coming along and saying, right, and while we're still doing all of this and we're shoveling the paper every day, we're going to change the processes in real time. And they've got limited capacity to do that. So it's very often not necessarily a reluctance to do it. It's just, this stuff takes time.
Yeah. One of the things I guess that I don't know, it's just a challenge for everybody sitting at the end of the chain, so the advisors and their clients, is this is to something Pete was just saying there, wrapped up with eIDAS and 3-tier authentication, and there's bits of regulation and legislation I suspect you trip over in this that a lay person like me wouldn't even know was involved, and maybe even IFAs sometimes don't quite realize what's going on in the background. So in Star, have you, I don't know, did your eyes get open to other stuff like this tangential stuff that you got to worry about that you didn't know, or is this something that just with a bit of effort, a rush and a push, the land will be ours, you know?
Bear in mind, Mark, I'm not a technician. It's never been my job to actually implement these processes. So I'm relying on other people who come to me and say, I mean, take Romy at Pension B, who came to me and said, look, you do realize electronic signatures are legal. Why are you guys not doing this? And she was talking to me with my Hargreaves Lansdown hat on rather than my Star hat. But she's right. It is legal. Look, here is the legislation that says you can accept it. So there's no reason why firms can't. Sometimes all it needs is someone to knock on the door and say, come on, guys, you need to step up here. And so one of the things we're finding working with Star is we're working through all these different questions a piece at a time. We're working through all these questions. Is that a legitimate barrier to progress? How are we going to measure that? How are we going to put that metric in place? How are we going to report that back up? How do we do that that's fair between a life company personal pension and a SIP provider so that it's equitable? All that kind of stuff. So you get the rules of the game set up, and then you can move on.
Yeah, that was one of the things I wanted to ask was, I've heard Romy talk about this in the past, actually, since you bring her up, and it's like a risk-based thing, right? There's one level of risk, which is I would like my pension transferred on a no signature basis to, this fictional kind of fun company I've just made up in a lesser spotted island off Antigua or something, compared to I want to move it to Standard Life, please, from Aegon or do whatever. So is that something that Star kind of works on? Is it kind of risk-based approach?
No, it's not, but I think that's where we need to go. And I think it's been really interesting in terms of HMRC and HM Treasury, anxieties around fraud. I think where we need to end up is something that looks like a whitelist. And I think, that's where we're going to end up is we're going to circle the wagons. We're inside this community. Everybody's signed up to this set of standards. We're busy bringing the fund management groups on. And it's been really interesting, by the way the fund management groups have kind of woken up to the fact that, we do have some skin in the game here. We do have a role here. And just in the last few months, I mean, the IA has been fantastic on this. So they're now starting to come around. But yeah, if we're all inside the circle of wagons together, we all know who we all are. We've all got contracts with each other. We're all working to the same set of standards. It actually then makes it quite a lot easier to compress some of those transaction processes, and then you just get the 1 in 100 transaction where you say, hang on, I've not heard of you before. What's this pension scheme you're looking to transfer this money to? So we're going to have to put a hold on that for a moment and just investigate that before the money goes. But meanwhile, the 99 other transactions are sailing through in double quick time. We will get there, but I think that's probably another year or two away yet.
Okay. And so boring, predictable type questions, but of your time with the industry bodies, what are you kind of proudest of God knows how many years you've been doing this stuff?
Oh, I joined the industry in 1986, Mark. That's quite a long time ago.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, it's quite old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So look, I started lobbying on, I was on the open market option on annuity purchase transactions in the sort of around 2009, I think it was. I remember meeting this obscure backbench politician who was really interested in this and was really engaged in pensions. And blow me, the next year Steve Webb was the pensions minister, and neither of us really expected to see that happen. But he was great, and I had a really good conversation with him, and he kind of got it about the open market option and how life codes was selling substandard annuities to existing customers and all the behavioral issues there. So it was interesting for me going from an outsider lobbying against the vested interests of the kind of establishment and of all these big life codes over the last 10 years to increasingly find myself working with the ABI, chairing ABI committees, working collaboratively with competitor institutions, and finding that most of the time it's better to be inside the tent peeing out rather than the other way around. So I found that a really interesting journey. I think over time, I think it's fair to say some of those institutions, some of those trade bodies have also gone on a bit of a journey themselves in terms of the customer focus that they've evidenced in terms of how they behaved and some of the personnel who've come and gone through those trade bodies over the years. It's been an immense privilege for me to be involved in all of that and to get involved in politics, to get involved with successive pensions ministers, and to develop an understanding of how you do change rules, how you do make stuff happen. And the reality is, mostly, it's pretty slowly incremental stuff. You get those occasional big moments, such as auto-enrollment. And look, it took the Turner Commission a couple of years to land that one. You get those occasional moments when George Osborne throws a grenade in on pension freedoms and everything changes really fast. Steve Webb's success with the state pension reforms, that was huge, but it took him a lot of hard work with the Treasury behind the scenes to make that happen. But most of the time, the stuff we've been talking about, like the transfers, it's just hard graft at the coalface, chipping away on the detail. And, I have immense respect for all the people who've been involved in that, the technicians, the people who've come and spent time on working groups, working out how to make it all happen in practical terms. That's where the real work gets done.
And I saw loads of quotes from you pinging around at the moment as everyone prepares to send you off on your bike. And we'll talk about that in just a wee set. That'll be an art after party bit, I guess. And you were saying that pension freedoms maybe was a bit rushed. That was a time when it didn't take the slow drip of water on stone to get things to change.
Yeah, I mean, look, so that was, I use it in presentations sometimes. There's this comedy moment, you look at Just Retirement's share price on whatever it was, March the 14th, March the 17th, 2014, and within seconds it halves. And those
lads love that joke every time, by the way. They're nuts for it.
They never tire of hearing
nuts
that.
for it, yeah.
So spectacular stuff. That's pretty rare. I think I've still got really mixed feelings about it. Stuff needed to change. And I think sometimes you've just got to push through the objections. Sometimes you just got to roll the dice and say, do you know what? We're doing this. At the same time, it was massively reckless and irresponsible and disruptive. And I have a huge sympathy for the FCA, who had very little forewarning of this, who just thought, okay, now we've got to deal with this. We've got to work out consumer protection with this whole new set of, and they're still actually trying to implement effective consumer protections years later to deal with pension freedoms. And it's still not perfect. It's still a work in progress. So, there's a bit of cognitive dissonance there. I think it was both spectacular and exciting and, progressive and unpicked a logjam, and also reckless and irresponsible at the same time.
There's Andy saying he got free chairs while working. They're all free now.
Sorry about
that stuff. And if I gave you a wish, let's put a time limit on it, right? So it's not a wish for whenever in the future, but let's say within the next 18 months for the pensions industry, that without you in it, what do you think is realistic for it to try and achieve in that time?
So the two policy changes, which you probably couldn't fully implement in that time frame that you've specified, but which I would like to see initiated. We've talked a lot about transfers, and I hope that continues to play through. I think we've set that off on a good trajectory now, and I'm sorry to walk away, but I think we will land that if you came back in a year or two. So I'll park that one. Auto enrollment, great success, but at its heart, it is flawed. It is incompatible with pension freedoms. Every time you change jobs, you have to stop the pension you're in. Doesn't matter how engaged you are with it, how happy you are with it. You have to join another pension with your new employer. And if you want to get those employer pension contributions, you have to join this new scheme. And to me, that is bonkers, and that absolutely works contrary to all our efforts to try and get people engaged with their futures and with their savings and investments. If we force people to join a bank account of their employer's choosing every time they change jobs, there'd be mutiny. And yet that's what they do. That's what we do with their pensions. So if I could change one thing, it would be to keep all the existing auto enrollment defaults in place, but to say, look, if you've got a pension and you're happy with it, when you change jobs, you can keep it, and you can go to your new employer and say, could you put your money into my pension, please? I'd change that. Yeah. The other thing I'd really like, and I think we will see movement on this in this post-coronavirus world, is pension taxation. It is an absolute mess. It's hugely expensive. It's massively inefficient. People don't understand it. There are so many rules that inhibit good behavior and good outcomes. So I'd get the Treasury to put the whole pension tax architecture out on the table and start again. And my colleague Nathan Long has worked out some really interesting ideas on how to take it forward. But I'll leave him to sort that out now.
Absolutely. Listen, I'm going to bring the main bit of things to an end now, and do our usual kind of closing bit, because I'm sure some people want to get on. But what I will do, Tom, to in the interest of not saving your blushes, but possibly getting you blushing. And it's from our own Mike, just saying, working in financial services shouldn't be a life sentence, and I hope Tom's new venture is a roaring success, but can't help think the pension sector is weaker without him. And certainly, Nathan's got some big shoes to fill from HL, and whoever the new poster child for pensions is, who knows? But
bless you, Mark.
We'll
thank you for that. It's been. Can I just respond by saying it's been an enormous pleasure.
Brilliant. So hang on if you're still up, and we'll just say that that's pretty much it for this week. Mike would like a discount from the bike shop. It's e-bikes, Mike. It's e-bikes. We know you'll scoff at those. Next week will be at 12:30, hopefully with none of the issues we had today. I didn't do T-shirt of the week, by the way. I was so flustered with the admin that I forgot to do that. The French metal band Gojira is providing our thing, doing the thing no metal band's ever done before, and basing their logo on a skull. So it's nice to see innovation there. I always want to find heavy music that people that don't like metal might listen to, and Gojira actually might be one of those. Very, very worth doing. A very quick joke for you. We've not had a lawyer joke yet, so I thought we might have a little lawyer joke. And Tom, I imagine you've had to spend a fair amount of time with lawyers in some of your work, so I thought this might be good. Anyway, elderly gentleman is on his deathbed, and having no family, he summons the three most important individuals in his life to him, and that's his IFA, of course, his doctor and his lawyer, and he gives each of them a cheque for £100,000 and says, there you are, gents. What I want you to do as one of my last tests to you is I want you to put that money in the grave with me. Nobody will check, it's up to you, but I want you to put the £100,000 in my grave with me and bury it with me, and I'm going to leave it to your conscience, and that's my last test to you. It's the funeral, and the IFA puts in an envelope, as does the doctor, as does the lawyer, and they're chatting away at the reception afterwards and saying, so what did you do? And the IFA said, well, of the 100,000, I put 90,000 in the grave with him. He did still owe me £5,000 for a cash flow forecast I did for him a little while ago. And I've also put £5,000 towards good causes, which I thought he would want. And the doctor said, well, you've beaten me there because I took £20,000 from it to pay for some new equipment for the local hospital, which I knew was very dear to his heart. So I feel like I've not done what he asked, but I feel I've done something he would support. And the lawyer said, well, I'm shocked at both of you. I put a check for the full amount right in the grave. And that's that joke. So thank you very much to everybody. Next week we will be joined by a guy called Ben from Premium, and we're really interested in that. We're going to be talking about AI, and Premium has got some AI working inside its system, and we're going to find out a little bit about that next week. So thank you to those that are leaving us just now. I'm going to get rid of the screens. The very final thing I'll say, as I say every week, is if you're in the fortunate position, as many of us are, in this sector during this horrendous time, that you've got a few quid in your pocket and you feel like doing something important with it, then the Samaritans would be extremely grateful for your support, as they are, along with everybody moving mountains to try and help those that need it most. Thanks to everyone. We'll stay, as we have done before, we'll stay quiet just for a moment, and then we'll get into chatting about less important things. Cheers. All right, that's that.
I want to hear the giraffe joke now.
I'll tell you later. I don't think everybody else could live through the giraffe joke, but it's a great joke. It's a really good joke. I still think the Barry Cryer joke from week 1 was the best one. The moth. But then it's Barry Cryer, right? So lots of jokes. So listen, tell us a bit about the bikes then.
So bizarrely, Mark,
e-bikes, man, you would never go on an e-bike, would you?
Can I just point out, at the start of this, there was a lag of maybe 10 seconds between your pictures and your voice.
Yeah.
And through the course of this, you've resynchronized, and you're actually.
I do that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you did it, but you're clearly a genius.
Well, yeah, absolutely. So e-bikes, that's a hell of a thing, isn't it?
As you and others may be aware, I've always been a bit of an enthusiast for two-wheel transport, and I've always kind of enjoyed cycling. The epiphany for me on the scooters was cycling back to Paddington through Hyde Park a couple of years ago on my little Brompton, looking slightly comical.
You're a bit big for a Brompton, aren't you?
I know, 16-inch
You're about
wheels.
what, 7'2" you are, something like that?
So you know, you've got to live with the loss of dignity that goes with it. But as my family would point out, that should no longer be a problem for me anyway. Yeah. And there's this guy on this little electric scooter, and he's gliding along serenely in his work clothes. So I pedal up alongside him and start chatting to him, as you do, start quizzing him about this amazing electric scooter that he's riding. And he's telling me all about it, how he bought it from China and only cost a couple £100, and how he sort of commutes several miles across London every day on it, and it's just a dog's bod. And that was a real eye-opener for me. I thought, you know, actually, these things are going to do something here. These are quite interesting. If you can now buy these for only a few £100, you know, this is the future, man.
Yeah.
And then around the same time, we were on holiday in the Dolomites, hiking up in the mountains, and all of a sudden there's these electric mountain bikes everywhere, and you've got these sort of clearly sports enthusiasts, but going up these really steep climbs on these electric mountain bikes, just come whirring past us, and they're all over the place. And all of a sudden, everywhere we went, there were more electric mountain bikes than there were conventional mountain bikes.
Really?
Thinking, okay,
wow.
Lots of these people wouldn't actually be out here at all unless they were on these motor-assisted vehicles. You know, if only conventional bikes were available to them, they wouldn't be doing it at all. So I'm like thinking, wow, you know, this is getting people out there. This is, and a couple of weeks ago, I'm cycling home on my road bike on one of my favorite hills, and this guy comes gliding past up the hill on this electric mountain bike. And there's a little bit, you know, my pride's a bit pricked by this, you know, this kind of hurts a little bit as I'm sweating, you know, because I'm not going fast at this point, and he comes gliding past me. So I kind of recognize that there's this kind of negative, this devil in you that thinks, you know, there's something wrong there's something cheating about using electric mountain bikes. And I try to acknowledge that and then just kind of box it off, because that's not a good mindset, right? And actually, the funny thing is, I got to the top of the hill, and there's this long, straight, gently downhill road, maybe 2 miles gently downhill back to the traffic lights near where I live. And I saw him in front of me, and I was just going like the clappers, and I overtook him just before the traffic lights. He had no idea I was trying to catch him, right? He's just doing his thing, you know.
I bet he did.
But I was so happy I caught him. You know,
so Andy's saying in the chat, the most satisfying thing is when you overtake an e-bike on a proper one.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. So look, you know, and look where we're at with the whole transport thing right now. And I've been doing a lot of research on this government's, frankly, I think still, even by 2050, quite bold commitment to go carbon neutral, and look at the amount of greenhouse gases that are emitted by transport, and what proportion come from cars, and how many car journeys are under 5 miles. And you know, it's just a no-brainer. So many of these journeys should be on electric scooters, should be on electric bicycles or conventional bikes. You know, that should be the go-to setting for anything under about 5 miles. I can tell you, you know, we only get rain in this country about 120 days of the year on average. So, you know, 2/3 of the time, you don't even have to put a rain jacket on to get one of these things out.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's the future, you know. So,
well, we talked a little bit before about, you know, in Edinburgh, depending on where you live, you've got half a bloody mountain to go up before you go anywhere. And I know that, you know, bound to put a lot of people off. I'm lucky, I just put her along the front. I deliberately live somewhere where I don't have to go up hills. But so my 2 mile cycle is all right when I do it. But for, you know, if you're going into the centre of town stuff, but e-bikes or e-scooters are funny though. That, I mean, people feel a bit terrorised by them, don't they? I think in London they maybe used to seeing them on the roads more, but certainly in other cities I get the impression not so much.
So this is the political engagement now. It's to find a way to, because they're currently illegal to use on the pavement, they're illegal to use on the road. I mean, technically you shouldn't be using them anywhere other than private land.
Oh really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I've been.
So you're like hawking illegal products, man.
Yeah.
You're like USIS. You're a USIS salesman now.
Yeah. So we've got to get them legal. And there's a Department for Transport inquiry at the moment. There's a Transport Committee inquiry about this. So, you know, the government's looking at them. We've got to get them legal. But we've got to do it in a way that's safe for pedestrians. So, I mean, I think the answer is you have them on cycle lanes, you have them on roads around towns. You keep the electric bikes and the electric scooters away from the pedestrians, and you keep the cars away as much as you can, away from the electric scooters and the bicycles. And the more you segregate them, the safer everyone is. But look, they've done this in Amsterdam and Copenhagen and Madrid and Paris, and it works. Yeah. You know? So we're really just debating the details.
Do you think you see a fair bit of I sort of think wish fulfillment in the main, but people saying, well, look, as we come out of this situation, which might take a year, right, if we're waiting for vaccines and all the rest of it, but that's going to give transport authorities and central planners time to refresh their thinking about sharing of roads and that kind of stuff. Is that a bit too wishful, do you think?
Some of it goes quite deep. So if you start digging into the cost benefit analysis models that the Treasury uses for road design, there are still some assumptions there that we need to address. You know, they'll assume that the phasing of traffic lights, you know, and how many cars you allow through in a given space of time, with the assumption that there's 2, 3, 4 passengers in the car, because there aren't. There's generally only one person in the car, versus allowing 10, 20, 30, 50 electric bikes or electric scooters through the traffic lights in the same phase, and what the economic benefit of that is. You've got to dig quite deep into all of that and the pinch points you get in roads. That will take time to unpick. You know, it's notable that the government in their manifesto, they promised £350 million as a cycle fund. Now, given that it costs £1 to £2 million for a single kilometre of cycling superhighway, £350 million is not going to go very far around the country. But then you can do lots of little things. You know, you can, in some places, just put a bit of paint on the road, and that will be enough, and that's really cheap. And some places you have to build a proper cycle superhighway, and that's really expensive.
Yeah.
But between central government and local authorities, they're spending about £30 billion a year on cycling infrastructure. So, on national transport infrastructure. So we need to kind of shift quite a bit of that money across to cycling. Transport for London spent about £4 billion on the cycling superhighways across London. So that wasn't cheap, but that's the kind of scale of spending that the government's got to take on board, and that doesn't happen quickly. So I think there will be some quick wins, but actually if you get into the realms of transforming the way we move around cities, there's quite a lot of inertia there.
Brilliant. Well, listen, it's
over, Mark.
No, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. I mean, I'm just having a look here, and people are talking about e-scooters and bikes and stuff being ready to hire now. You can hire, you just pick them up off the street, can't you, in London, and lots of Paris the same. Apparently Larbert's got e-bike hire now, says Gary.
Where even is Larbert?
Where even is Larbert, Gary? Get you tutor us. You sure it's not just somebody's nicked an e-bike, Gary, and just left it out? So that was going on in Netherlands well ahead of us. So many people wishing you well. Our struggle will always be space, says Philip. Most other cities have much wider roads and pavements other than segregate various forms of traffic.
Look, Philip, you're right, okay? But anyone who knows Bristol, White Ladies Road in Bristol, right? They've recently redesigned. It's a big drag down the middle of Bristol, going down from the Downs, Clifton, in towards the city centre. And they put these big islands in the middle of the road, and they put these trees in the islands, and they widen the pavement. And then as a bit of an afterthought, they slapped a line down the road and said, okay, there you go, there's a cycle lane. It's like, come on, guys. You could have taken a metre of that pavement, and you could have made that a separate cycle lane, but you didn't. So, and that's within the last 5 years, I should think they did that. So you're right, there are areas where it's quite narrow, but then you can divert bikes and scooters on side streets. And it just takes a willingness to think about it. And you look at what Chris Boardman's done in Manchester. He's done some really good stuff in Manchester, where they've actually bought into the idea of making Manchester a cycling city. It is doable. It just takes a bit of will and a bit of money.
I know the thing in Edinburgh, when I'm kind of, my kids can cycle, but a 9-year-old boy, we're just getting into cycling on the road and learning how to do that. And yes, there are cycle lanes, but they're shared with buses. And the buses pull in front of you like that. And it's Jesus. And all bus drivers are psychopaths. So I know that's an unfair thing to say. And they're key workers. And thank you for driving the buses. But stop cutting up.
Yeah, buses scare me more than anything else when I'm cycling around London. Buses are the ones that terrify me.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Listen, let's call it there. Tom, thank you so much for spending time with us. We wish you every success, and we will miss you very much. But I get the feeling we've probably not seen the last of you anyway. And especially we'll keep an eye out for suddenly cycling being at the top of the breakfast news.
Bless you, Mark. It's been a pleasure, and thank you very much for inviting me on as part of my farewell tour. I really appreciate spending the time talking to you.
We're pleased you could stop by. All right. All the best, everyone. Thank you for sticking with us, and we'll see you next week. Cheers.